Chappell. We're going to continue with this four-part series on got a community assignment, and then how do I prepare. The first part concerned physical aspects. Was part one, was the physical aspects of how to get ready for a community assignment, which was mostly taking care of body, taking care of where you are, how to get in, food, all that. This part is about the mental aspects, and of course there's a lot of things involved, but we'll try to narrow it down to about a 50-minute presentation. So first, I want to backtrack to last time and mention that on the physical aspects, I neglected to use the word warm up. So we'll talk more about that in this time as we discuss the mental aspects of community interpreting, preparing, how to go into it. Not so much the work itself, but yourself being ready for the appointment. Okay. First of all, I want to read the Code of Professional Conduct. Not the whole long version. This is the short version, but this is really what I call the menu. If you have an interpreting assignment and you have to go to an appointment, what is everybody expecting? The menu, well, I've always used the story, you go to a McDonald's, what do you want? When you go in, you still read the menu, but you already know what you want. So, first, the interpreter will adhere to the standards of professional communication, of confidential communication. Key word, confidential. 2, that the interpreters possess the professional skills and knowledge required for that specific interpreting situation. 3, interpreters conduct themselves in the manner appropriate to that specific interpreting situation. 4, interpreters demonstrate respect for consumers. 5, interpreters demonstrate respect for colleagues, interns, and students of the profession. 6, interpreters maintain ethical business practices. And number 7, interpreters engage in professional development. That being the basis of everything that we do, I'm going to narrow in on some points that maybe can be a little, let's say, elaborated on, or that probably need a little more attention. First of all, when I take an assignment, do I have any idea what they're talking about? What kind of assignment is this? I've got to do what? Do I know the deaf people involved? And what is their role and responsibility of that information to be conveyed? Okay, let's narrow it down to different situations first. But even before that, let me say this, it's an old credo I've used for many years. There's 3 different languages an interpreter has to understand as they go into an appointment. 3 of them. 1, English, kind of obvious. ASL, sign language, obvious. The 3rd one, I call it something ease. Maybe it's post office ease. Maybe it's court ease. Hospital ease. That language that is used in that specific work area. The other 2, if you have a handle on those, that 3rd one is what you can focus on. That's why number 2 says, if you feel you have the skills and the knowledge ready for this assignment, for this situation, then you should be ready to focus on the situation and not have to worry about your skills and knowledge. Nice and bland, but that's true. What about a college class? We have a lot of that going on now. Personally, I don't worry too much about the college class because that subject is going to be taught. Do we have to know about engineering before we go into an engineering class? It would help. But generally speaking, the teacher's going to start from step one. If you're in on the first class, try not to fret about that. The teacher's going to explain to the students what they need to know beginning from the first day to be used for the rest of the quarter or for the semester. And the teacher will catch us up. The issue comes in if you're going into class number 7 as a substitute. What kind of things happen there that you could have solved had you been there from the beginning? Well, one, I was not there for the first class. Therefore, if there was some kind of a relationship between the interpreter and the student, I am unaware of it. Meaning what? What kinds of signs maybe they've invented for that class? Now the student has a responsibility of keeping me on cue. How do I know they've come up with something like DC to mean whatever term that might be in that class? I don't know. I might get lucky and abbreviate it, but the student needs to be ready and aware that the interpreter does not get notes from other interpreters. We don't keep notes. Even what the subject matter is, I'm not sure. I mean, okay, we're talking about engineering, but what are we talking about today? Are we talking about plane geometry? Are we talking about distance on a rod reader or what? I don't know until I come in and sit down and take my place. Now, things I can control is where I'm sitting. You know, how well do I hear the teacher? All those things that we talked about last time. But what the subject matter is, I try not to give too much pressure on myself for that. I can work my way into that. That comes up to where the deaf person has to help out a lot. Now, just keep an open mind, do the best you can, say what you see, and sign what they say. Training classes are very similar. You go to somebody's job, they may be talking about computers. Well, many times we go in and they're talking about some particular program that we can't even pronounce. Then you hear it and you can't spell it. Cronus, a very popular timekeeping program used by some large corporations. I'm not sure I spelled it right. Cronus? I don't know. Help from that person there who knows that ease already should be able to help us get through when they talk about that subject. And if you're talking about something like time management in a corporation, obviously that's one of the most important things. That's a high priority and important to anybody who works anywhere is your time management and your timekeeping. Different subject. Let's go to a legal matter. Obviously much more technical, much more important. Anytime you have something that's going to be signed on a piece of paper, that is called documentation. It is proof. It's something maybe somebody understands, they agree to pay, agree to go to jail, whatever the situation might be. When that paper is signed, everybody should know what that paper is for. Just sign it. Go ahead. Don't do that. Don't sign it. Don't tell somebody to sign it. Offer up to explain or to have them read it to the deaf person so that you can interpret into their language. But if the deaf person will go ahead and sign, they go back to Code of Professional Responsibility. It's just their decision. Respect for that. And don't blast them out. Why'd you sign it? Not my problem. Really. I may be thinking, ooh, it's going to be a problem later. But you have to allow people to make decisions on themselves. That's what ADA says. You can screw it up for yourself now. Need help? Can't interfere. Okay. If, like in a legal situation, let's just take one term, the word table. Obviously, there's lots of meanings for the word table. But if you sign table as the table, it may not be the right table we're talking about, and that may be confusing. It would be easy to misunderstand that. Lots of places like this room, you see a table in front of me. I've got a lot of papers here. If we're talking about numbers on the table, and you sign it, numbers on the table, thinking that it's this, because in your experience, must be numbers on those papers. But maybe that has nothing to do with it. Maybe there's some kind of a contract that has a table, a schedule, a diagram of numbers. Has nothing to do with these papers. So the deaf person gets the wrong image and might make a decision with some misinformation. So that's why we have to be sure that if you think you've got down the jargon, the ease that you're discussing, ask the question, excuse me, are we talking about a table like this table, or are we talking about some other kind of table? Get that clear. And when you ask the question, sign the question so that the deaf person will understand. Oh, interpreter's not sure of the table. Fine, let me back up. Get it straight. Now tell me what the question is again. It all comes down to knowing our experience, our limitations of how to interpret something. So if you feel that your experience is not quite enough, ask the question if you have that chance. Hopefully it's not 500 people in an audience and you're going, what'd you say? Probably not the right time. Hopefully that subject won't be something that is based on them signing something. If so, let the deaf person take the charge to ask the question. Do we all sign the same way? No, we have our individual way of signing. Why? Where we're from. What kinds of places do we come from? Where? Mama, daddy deaf? Learn from school? Learn from church? Family member? Next door neighbor? When you are signing, you have to remember the other person probably doesn't sign the same way. Sounds too obvious to even mention, but it does go back to, oh Lord, how do I handle this if I see something that's a little bit skewed? Oh, and one other thing I want to say. I've said this many times in person, but now that we've got a disc running here, if somebody says, that's the wrong sign, I disregard that comment as somebody who doesn't know that there's probably 10 more signs that mean the same word. You can say, that's my sign, you have another one? And I hope they do have another one. I'd like to know. But if somebody says, oh, wrong sign, they're wrong for even saying that. It's just like an accent. You didn't say it right. Well, I'm from the South. Okay, honey? So there's not a right or a wrong sign, just what seems to work in that situation, with that person, with that audience. Okay. Let's make this a little more difficult. The deaf person's going to give a speech. You want to talk about wet palms and sweaty brows? Just tell an interpreter they're interpreting for an audience speech. Now what? Okay, all right. Let's think this through. Don't have to take any medication. Just hang on. Think about this. One, does that speaker have it all together? Maybe I know that person. Maybe, okay, but that's a point you can't solve. Two, did they make a written copy or a printed copy of the presentation? If so, Yeah, you're in Shangri-La. This is great. You've got something to work with. Now, to keep on time and pace it out, you got it great. What happens if you don't have that printed copy though? And many people don't provide that. So what happens? Let's say somebody's speaking in a college class. They're giving their presentation on what they did in lab. Wouldn't that second person being involved be pretty good? That's a very smart move to make sure you have a team interpreter. Some of us prima donnas say, oh, I can do it myself, but hey, do as I say, not as I do, okay? The team interpreter is there. Look, we've got anything I'm talking about, you can find on rid.org, and this is called a standard practice paper. This is the one on team interpreting. I don't know if you can see it, it doesn't matter. But you can look for it online. I don't have my glasses on, but let me see if I can read just a little bit. The decision is based on, if you want to use a team, is based on the length and complexity of the assignment. Well, if it's a long one, that's the first rule. We always try to send the second person if we go maybe an hour and a half. After that, you should have a second person with you. The complexity of the assignment, well, I would say the deaf person giving a speech is one of the most difficult ones. If we wanted to vote, I'm sure that would be in the top 2. I'm not sure what the other one would be, but that is definitely up there. I'm getting a lot of head nods, yes, agreeing. The unique needs of that person being served. Once I had an assignment to go to meet with a deaf girl who had cerebral palsy. She wanted to discuss an issue of somebody who supposedly had allegedly raped her. Okay. That's probably in the top 2 also, okay? I got a team interpreter, but not just a team interpreter. I got Sheila. If you don't know who Sheila is, she's deaf. She is my wife, yes, but she's an old RSC. She's a sign language interpreter, a sign language instructor, I should say, for Deaf Connect. And she has probably done hundreds of hours evaluating new interpreters in different state and RID functions. So this might be a good time to borrow her for a moment. What happened with sitting with the doctor, getting the story. We've got Sheila and the client discussing with each other what's going on. They're making a relationship with each other, getting that repertoire between the two, making everybody feel comfortable. We're already talking about a very sensitive matter. Sex abuse, I would say that's pretty sensitive. They're getting comfortable with their zone, with their relationship, with their communication style. At the same time, I'm explaining to the doctor what we're doing. Why do we have a deaf person sitting in? When the doctor understood that, they understood that this was going to take probably a little more time than what is normal. But this was an important time to get this together, so we wanted to be sure that the message was totally clear. This was for an official document, a letter, and probably police action. So there's a lot of things going on in this situation. The physical and emotional dynamics of the setting may require team interpreting. The physical, obviously, you know, if it's a setting in a large audience, you may be on stage, you may be in a classroom with a lot of computers all in the way. There's just many situations to that. The emotional dynamics, obviously, some large things are going to be joyous occasions, but sometimes they're not. Maybe a funeral is a good time for a team interpreter. Might need some help for that. Take that little break. Get it together, come back, swap out. Now, this may be the one reason that we started teaming was to keep repetitive stress motion down for an interpreter, to keep them from having to do a whole hour or a whole 2 hours of work on their own. The team gives relief physically, but hopefully the team does not go away, but is there to help with that ease. One of those other languages that's not English or ASL. The post office ease, the legal ease. Maybe even just saying, hey, you don't need to interpret that. Look, it's on the wall. They're showing a slide. It tells all the information. It can be read. That's a nice 2 minutes to just kind of back off and go ahead, dude. If you're using a deaf person, that'd usually be called the CDI. The CDI, oh, thank you. Okay. You may need this. The CDI is a certified deaf interpreter. We don't use a lot of them here in Memphis. We don't have any certified as a CDI. So it's not necessarily required, but it is highly encouraged if you can do that. All right. When this deaf person is making a speech, let's go back to the college room. If the deaf person is making a speech, maybe they're the instructor. Maybe they're teaching a workshop. Anyway, do you know their style? If you do, that helps a lot. I know the way he signs, I know the way they talk. Maybe they'll move their mouth. That gives you a hint. Maybe they print everything and put it up there. Oh, well, I can read that myself, you know. But to know the jargon also. Sometimes they may throw out some sign. Oh, what's that? AIDB. AIDB? Oh, yeah, he's probably from Alabama. That's the Institute for Deaf and Blind. Okay. You keep all these notes in your head as you're running while you're still interpreting. One of the mental challenges of interpreting. My suggestion is have as much confidence as you can. That's number one. Have as much confidence as you can in your ability. Like I said, there's 3 things you got to know. One is ASL and English. If you can just eliminate those 2 from your worries, do it. That way you can focus on number 3, and that is the language being used. If you don't understand their jargon, there's going to be a lot of, what? What's that? The team interpreter should be sitting right next to you. The head should probably only be about this far away. And what they should be doing is looking for any hints, clues, ideas, listening for other people to give that hint of what is that, what are we talking about? Interpreter speaking, 100% focused on the speaker, I guarantee you. But this other person can spend maybe 60% of their time focused on the speaker, and that other 40% may be that information you need that helps you get through something just a little smoother to keep that confidence level real high. Because when you start making mistakes, what happens to confidence? It goes down a little. It's easier to start up here and go down a little than it is to be, I can't do this, and then build up. Probably the wrong time. How do you have that confidence? Experience. If you've never done it, you want to do it. Do you really want to do it? No, not me. But you need to. You need to. I didn't go to school to learn this stuff, so I wasn't jammed into a schoolroom with a video in front of me going, okay, now you pretend you're interpreting for this speech. Okay? I didn't have to do that. I grew up with mom and dad and all their friends that worked at, oh yeah, AIDB. I know what that means now, Alabama Institute for Deaf and Blind, yeah. And I was able to grow up with this discussion in the living room or in the kitchen or at the football game, and them just talking about, well, who's the new teacher? Oh, talking about new program. Oh, new kids going to new school. Oh, and you get all that information there. You feel, oh, okay, I got this. So if they talk about anything there, I have experience about that. One thing that helped me when I started out in this job was to say, okay, now I'm about to counter that. One thing that hurts us in this job is not knowing how to say no. Sometimes we don't know how to say no. And one of the mental aspects of this job is knowing when to say no. Go back to tenet number 2 in the Code of Professional Conduct. It says, the question is, do you have the skills and knowledge for this particular interpreting situation? Well, one, how do I know? I don't know. Maybe I should be naive and go ahead and do it. Well, that's how I learned. Because my confidence is way up here. Why? I'm a coder. I think I can do this. Yeah, just tell me what to do. I don't care. I'm a coder. I can do it. Doesn't work for everybody. I understand that. So you have to evaluate yourself. Know your limitations. Back to the speaker. Reading that finger spelling. Whew. Usually tough for most new interpreters. A lot of people say the difference between a coda and the school interpreter is that finger spelling. Is that true? I would think a lot of people, again, let's vote. Huh? What do you say? Top 3? Yeah, we're in the top 3 there with that comment. Okay. All right, right in there? Okay. A lot of times your best partner may be that coda. You've got the signs, you studied the signs in school. I read the whole book. I made an A, I was on a roll. But you can get that coda sitting there with you, and if they're catching the finger spelling, it's a sigh of relief. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. I think I'm right. Grasping that message before your mouth moves. Okay. The word is lag time. I, as a coda, hate a lot of lag time. But sometimes you need that. Sometimes I need that too. I'm not just saying y'all. But I do anticipate, do I need more lag time? And sometimes, yes, I do. Why? One, the person who's signing may be one of those people that will start a thought with the object. Then they're talking about something that happened recently. Then they go back to some story of why this came up. And then they come back to why they need this, all in one, what we would call a sentence. Okay. Let's see. All right. You want to buy a car because the other one broke down. You need to go to work. Okay. All right. I need to buy a car. All that other stuff's kind of extra. We'll fill that in as we go. So take your time. See if you got it right. Remember the situation. If you're in front of an audience and there's dead time, they're going to wonder, is the mic working? What happened to the interpreter? They fall asleep? Maybe they're switching or something. Why do I hear nothing? He's talking.